This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, great. Um, so welcome and thank you for joining us for the first of three webinars that will be focusing on advancing gender equality. Just before we get started, I'm just going to have a few housekeeping notes. First of all, as I mentioned, this webinar will be recorded and a copy of the presentation will be available afterwards on the EHRC website. And there will also be a quick Q&A session after Kathy's presentation today, so people will have the opportunity to ask questions. So, okay, I just heard a quick ding. That was probably me, sorry. So let me introduce myself. My name is Marie Mold, and I am the Manager of Stakeholder Engagement here at EHRC. We are delighted to do this today in partnership with Natural Resources Canada and to support the Equal by 30 campaign, which you will hear more about momentarily. I want to give a warm welcome to Kim Shumsky, who is the Senior Policy Advisor in the Environment and Energy Policy Division at NRCan. We are also very pleased to welcome our speaker today, Kathy Lorette, Senior Vice President of Business Transformation at Electra, who will talk about, sorry? Okay, I'm sorry. I thought somebody was asking a question. Kathy Lorette, Senior Vice President of Business Transformation at Electra, who will talk about her organization's experiences advancing gender equality and how they have utilized the signing of the Leadership Accord for Gender Diversity and Equal by 30 to affect real measurable change. Okay, so let's get started. For anyone that's new in the audience, Electricity Human Resources Canada is a national not-for-profit organization that addresses the human resource and labor market challenges within the Canadian electricity sector. Our vision is to build a highly skilled, safety-focused, and diverse Canadian electricity workforce for now and the future. But while Canada has a strong and diverse energy supply, unfortunately, the same cannot be said yet for our workforce. As in many technical sectors, women working in energy represent a much smaller component of the workforce than they should. And in many instances, they continue to face barriers that limit their advancement, or indeed their desire to remain in the industry. We have been working diligently over the last decade to support change, and the Leadership Accord was born out of that work. It provides a platform to create a culture of equality and inclusion throughout the workforce. It is a public commitment by employers, labor, and educational institutions to promote the values of diversity, equality, and inclusion, and increase the representation of women, in particular in the skilled trades and non-traditional positions. It is the premise of the Accord that to effect systemic change, a bold vision is required by industry leaders, that those at the top of an organization need to set the standard for others to follow. Studies show that diverse teams in the workplace lead to greater innovation, a positive impact on an organization's bottom line, a slew of recruitment and retention benefits, and increased employee commitment. However, as you can see on this slide, the numbers tell a different story. There are 8.6 million women working in Canada, making up approximately 48% of the Canadian workforce, but still represent only 25% of the workforce in the electricity sector. Furthermore, fewer than 13% of practicing licensed engineers are women. In the trades, that number plummets to fewer than 5%. Despite the rise in the proportion of women in the electricity industry and best efforts to tap into, develop, and retain this cohort, the pace of improvement has been slow, with the parity between men and women in the industry remaining a long way off. It is clear that we have more work to do. I'd like to hand over to Kim Shumsky, who will provide an update on the Equal by 30 campaign, and then we will move to our keynote presentation. Kim, over to you.
Thank you so much, Marie. Right off the bat, huge thanks to EHRC for convening us today. Really phenomenal example of a domestic initiative that we are so proud to have been able to partner with, have really set the stage and taught us a lot about how to move this work forward. What I'd like to do today very quickly is simply talk about Equal by 30, what it is, its relationship to EHRC, and why it might be something of interest to the people on the line today. Equal by 30 is an international principles-based campaign that looks a lot like the Leadership Accord. It was launched under the banner of the Clean Energy Ministerial, which is an international collection of about 26 nations who come together regularly to discuss clean energy writ large. Within that body of work, Canada has always led the charge on gender diversity since it joined a couple of years ago. This is important because Canada will be hosting the Clean Energy Ministerial this year, and we see in that an opportunity to really present Canadian leadership across a host of clean energy issues, and most particularly on gender equality. Like the Leadership Accord, the campaign asks for endorsement of very high-level principles in the areas of equal pay, leadership, and opportunity. And the second phase of that work, once endorsed, is to develop the commitments that help us demonstrate that we are moving the dial. The commitments are published, identified by organizations. They are published online on our website. And over time, the intention is to show progress against those original commitments. We've been very delighted at the response. To date, we have over 50 private sector organizations signed on to Equal by 30, actually closer to 60 as of today. And internationally, in forums that we tend to operate within, there's been strong endorsement. We were a centerpiece of the G7 ministerial in Halifax last year, where all G7 countries signed on to Equal by 30. That puts a lot of wind in our sails, but the work is not yet done. One of the things that was very important to us was to respect that domestic industries have done a lot of work on inclusiveness and diversity already. EHRC is proof of that. So ours was not to replicate or reproduce. We wanted to find a way to make sure that what we were offering was an internationalized platform to showcase the things that Canadian organizations were already doing. And that's why we have worked to find a way to make sure that signatories to the Leadership Accord can be signatories to Equal by 30 without reproducing the reporting burden. Existing signatories under the Leadership Accord would adhere to the principles thereof. They are completely transferable to Equal by 30. We are very much in sync. So as we approach the Clean Energy Ministerial next May, I would like to encourage the organizations here with us today to consider both the Leadership Accord as a strong and domestic presence on developing commitments around gender equality, but also to leverage the platform that we can provide as a federal government and as conveners. And that happens at the Clean Energy Ministerial next May. So I will throw it back to the guest of honor here, Kathy Lorette. I'm so pleased to have her here and hear about her firsthand experiences. I am available to anybody who would like to reach out and learn a little bit more about Equal by 30 and how they might become involved. And once again, Marie, thank you so much for bringing so many great people together today to focus on gender equality. Help move the dial.
Thank you, Kim. Just before Kathy gets started, I'd like to do a brief introduction to Kathy. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, which is Kathy Lorette. Kathy is 35-year engineering and operations professional of the energy industry and is currently serving as Senior Vice President of Business Transformation. As a senior VP, Kathy ensures that successful delivery of any merger integration plans, and in previous roles oversaw all aspects of engineering, construction and maintenance, and supply chain management divisions. She provides leadership for the continuous improvement culture and initiatives that drove increased levels of performance in Horizon Utilities operations. Kathy is also the Vice Chair of the EHRC Board of Directors and is an influential and well-regarded voice for removing barriers that contribute to underrepresentation of women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, also known as STEM. She works tirelessly as an advocate for the transformation of the energy sector, ensuring opportunities are created for young women seeking a career that may have otherwise be seen as unattainable. Today, Kathy Lorette will share Electra's experience and what signing the Accord, as well as the Equal by 30 commitment, has meant in real times for their organization. Kathy, I will switch it over to you.
Okay. Okay, I'm waiting for that share button to come up.
Yep. Okay. Okay, I am clicking on your name, and it's not allowing me to do it. Just a second. I'm just trying to figure this out. Okay, you should be okay now. Perfect.
See my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen. I hope everybody see her screen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm happy to be here today to talk about our journey at Electra. But before I get started, in case people don't know who Electra Utilities is, Electra is an energy company that serves customers all the way from Penetanguishene in the north down to St. Catharines in Niagara. We're the second largest municipally owned energy solution company in North America. Our head office is located in Mississauga, Ontario, and we have over 1,500 very talented employees who manage almost $4.5 billion in assets, and we serve 1 million customers. And just January 1st, we were fortunate enough to welcome Guelph Hydro into the Electra family, so we are just that much bigger as of January 1st. So Marie talked a little bit about these stats in her opening remarks, but I just wanted to reiterate that these statistics are pretty bleak, and they are really the driving force behind the programs to improve gender diversity. And gender diversity in the electricity sector is improving, and it certainly has improved since I started 35 years ago, but the pace is way too slow, and the parity between men and women is still a long way off, so we have some work to do. So the business case for diversity is quite clear. Talent outcomes and engagement greatly improve in a diverse and inclusive organization. Gender diversity is good for business because it adds skill, creativity, and diverse thinking to organizations. It strengthens team dynamics and improves the whole decision-making process. At the end of the day, the addition of women will also increase women's economical power through increased earning potential. In STEM-related jobs, women represent a very small number, and the inclusion of women will help alleviate the pending resource shortage, as a large number of people will retire in the next 5 to 10 years. If you didn't know this, 40% of skilled trades in Ontario are ready to retire in 2020. So God help you if you need a plumber, because there won't be very many of them around. So we need to do some work on this. But this is a huge opportunity to introduce more women into the trades. So I want to share Electra's journey with you today, and it's a great story. We've taken a very practical approach to tackling the very large diversity and inclusion issue. Our journey began with the signing of the Leadership Accord on Gender Diversity on February 24th, 2017. At that time, we were not even 1 month old as Electra, and Electra was the creation through the merger of EnerSource, Horizon, PowerStream, and Hydro One Brampton. The Accord was really a launching pad for us to move to a more broader diversity and inclusion initiative. And when I'm out in the industry promoting the Accord, I always talk about starting with gender before moving to a broader D&I platform. It's really easy to wrap your arms around the gender issue because the diversity and inclusion platform is so big that I find that people just get paralyzed with, they don't know where to start, and this is such a huge initiative that they don't end up doing anything. So, in our industry specifically, gender is a great place to start and something you can really make some progress on. So I was so thrilled that Electra was the first company to sign on to the Leadership Accord, and I have to say that we had overwhelming support from this initiative. Our board of directors were very supportive, but they did question at the time we signed it, what about the larger issues of diversity and inclusion? Well, gender diversity is the main issue in the electricity sector, and based on where we were at the merger, was very new. It was a great place to start to get our feet wet before we tackle a larger agenda. we have massive integration underway. So we didn't want to tackle too much because the majority of our resources are focused on the integration of the 4 companies. So I want to talk a little bit about the process for those of you who don't know about the Accord, because it does kind of set you on the right path right out of the gate. So after you sign as a signatory, as we did, the process is quite easy. And we felt that this was a great way to kickstart the formation of our new culture at Electra. So our CEO signed the Accord and made a commitment on behalf of the organization. And the signed Accord is actually posted in the lobby of our head office. So we completed a baseline assessment of our current practices. So since we were new and we still had, a lot of new people, I kind of spearheaded, I did the first cut of the baseline assessment, and then I got an HR person from each of the 4 legacy utilities, and we sat down and we completed the baseline assessment. So you don't need IT systems to track this kind of stuff. It really is a conversation with the right people to do the baseline assessment. And we looked at the 3 areas: policy and governance practice, education and workplace readiness, and recruitment and retention practices. And as you go through this exercise, you score yourself from 0 to 3 in each of the questions. And as you go through the evaluation tool, it has an action planning guide that really prompts you to create an action plan for the top 3 areas that you really need improvement in. And then every 2 years, you will reassess your practices and measure your improvement. So this is really all about just moving the needle on gender diversity. And the beautiful thing about it is you can move at your own pace because you're just measuring yourself against yourself, right? So you just do as much or as little as you can handle. So our initial self-assessment scored us at a 2, which put Electra in the achievement or intermediate level. So I gotta say, we're very competitive at Electra, so we immediately landed on a goal to achieve outstanding by 2019. So we've got our reevaluation coming up at the end of February in 2019. So for us, moving to excellence means that practices are embedded into the corporate culture and values, and that's really where we're striving to get to. So Electra had strong diversity scores for the following things. So Electra actively participates and champions networking events and opportunities to further promote the attraction of women to the sector. Electra also has a very strong pool of capable and talented female leaders that we commit to attracting and retaining and developing for the future. We scored high marks for 30% of women on our board of directors, and we have over 35% of women in senior leadership positions. Electra's new culture and supporting values respect diverse skills, thinking, and new ways of working. A culture that we can continue to nourish and grow, and we're really excited about that. But we've got some work to do in some of the other areas. So because we are a new company, ensuring policies are inclusive, we had to review key HR policies to ensure gender diversity. But it was really good timing for us since we are integrating companies and policies. It was actually good timing for that. We needed to develop specific programs to better support women in the workplace. And so our initial focus was on networking and mentoring for women because we know those are 2 areas for women that holds them back. We wanted to strive to hire more women in non-traditional roles, and that is easier said than done because if you don't have the candidates to begin with, it's a very difficult process. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. But I'm happy to say that we do have 3 female line maintainers in the field. We have 2 female system operators and many female engineering technicians and technologists. So, but it's still not enough, and we want to get those numbers up. So I'm very proud of the work that we do in the community. My personal passion is to get more women into STEM careers and trades, and I've been trying to get that pipeline filled with more women for some time. But here's a list of some of the programs that we've been involved with for some time. And I often take our female technical and tradespeople to these events like these. Women from Electra really do provide leadership and mentorship in the hopes that we can really increase the future pipeline of women in the electricity sector. And young women cannot be what they can't see. So that is very important for all women in our sector to get out there and show young women what's really possible. So, so we first launched the idea of a more robust diversity and inclusion initiative with the board of directors, and they were waiting for it, so we got really good response. Then we introduced the concept to our employees at one of our town hall meetings in November of 2017. We just kind of put out a little teaser out there. CEO talked about it briefly, about what we were thinking about. And I gotta say, we had immediate response from the employees on how to get involved in this initiative. So that was a very positive step. The video I'm going to show you was launched in July of 2018 and really demonstrates the commitment from our CEO and got the momentum going for this initiative, and employees were eager to sign up. So have a look at this.
Since we became Electra, we've been pulling together to truly become one company, one team, one culture. We want to create a workplace that attracts the best talent, regardless of gender, race, sexual orientation, or religion. But good intentions aren't always enough. We need to act decisively, and we're doing just that. I mentioned at our recent town halls that we're working on a diversity and inclusion strategy. It's essential to our success, and it's the right thing to do. We now have a plan to build a stronger and more diverse workforce. The new Diversity and Inclusion Council will lead these efforts, the details of which will be shared in the days and weeks to come. Members of the council will be announced shortly, include executive sponsorship and senior leadership. They'll be responsible for providing governance over activities stemming from this initiative. Employees will be invited to join the effort through participation on committees. While the council will eventually explore all aspects of diversity and inclusion, they'll start with gender. Women are underrepresented in our sector, especially in careers connected to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. They're particularly underrepresented in leadership roles, including supervisors, managers, and executive leadership. We're working to change this. Having a workforce that reflects the diverse communities we serve will make us a leading employer and a top choice for the best talent. Let's show our customers, future employees, and our sector that diversity and inclusion and the excellence it breeds is the key to Electra's success as an industry leader. Thank you.
So our first step was to form a governance structure that reports up to the CEO and the board, because we want a lot of visibility to this initiative. So the CEO and board are really responsible for providing sponsorship, governance on the mandate and the structure, etc. And they actually appointed the D&I Council. So the D&I Council was appointed at the end of July, and I was appointed as the chair of the D&I Council. 5 other council members were appointed, and these were cross-functional senior leaders appointed based on performance and potential to move the D&I agenda forward. Council is also supported by the Learning and Organizational Development team. These senior leaders are expected to make a visible commitment and will be accountable for driving D&I best practices throughout Electra. They will also provide leadership and guidance for the ERG and work together to create a multi-year diversity and inclusion strategy and plan. The ERGs, or Employee Resource Groups, are voluntary employee-led groups organized based on social identity, shared characteristics, or life experiences. The ERG will identify D&I opportunities and practical solutions. These are really the culture champions and ambassadors for diversity and inclusion in our organization. So ERGs are designed to develop a sense of community and strengthen employee connections with one another. Sponsored by a member of the D&I Council, each approved ERG will be responsible for promoting inclusion, awareness specific in their areas of focus, while enhancing employee engagement, and supporting Electra's D&I strategy. So there's two mandates for each employee resource group. One, identify the purpose of the group and the reason for existing, and provide a work plan of what you want to accomplish, how, and when you're going to execute. So our original intention was to have a Women at Electra ERG due to the focus on our gender diversity. And applications outside of Women at Electra would be reviewed and additional ERGs would be formed if there was enough interest. Well, I got to tell you, we had such a large interest in the Women at Electra ERG that we decided to break this down further to allow for quicker decision making and implementation. So we ended up having 4 ERGs focused on women. We have Mosaic, STEM, networking and events, and mentorship and leadership. The 5th ERG is Mosaic and visible minorities, and that's for all employees. So this picture on the slide was from our kickoff meeting where we all got together for the first time, and we had some initial diversity and inclusion training because we really wanted everyone speaking the same language, and we organized into our groups to start reviewing our go-forward plans. And I gotta say, we are so happy to see so many men sign up for the women's groups too. It was very, very refreshing. So I want to talk about some of the things we have done since signing the Leadership Accord and now with our more fulsome D&I program. So the people team has completed a review of all the people policies to ensure they are inclusive. So that is now complete. We have focused our recruitment for female engineers and trades. And I got to tell you, that's still a very tough go because there are a few candidates coming out of universities and trade schools, but we are working hard to get involved with these educational organizations to increase the number of women. We partnered with Conestoga College to create a pre-trades program for Aboriginals. And early after signing the accord, we worked with our procurement documents. So our procurement documents and our master service agreements now include language that we are a signatory to the Leadership Accord on gender diversity, and really to promote our public commitment to gender diversity. And it brings awareness to other companies who don't know about that as well. We held our first networking event in December that was sponsored by our Women at Electra Networking and Events ERG. One of our female board members spoke about work-life balance, and it was such a great event, attended by men and women, and this will be first of many events at Electra. We were an early adopter to NRCan's Equal by 30 campaign. We really wanted to participate in this because it promotes gender diversity on an international stage. We created the creation of the D&I Council in July last year, followed by ERGs in the fall. And we've also written a diversity and inclusion policy for Electra. Now, we just recently launched a multicultural calendar, and we thought this was a great tool that would bring awareness and education on all the multicultural events that occur throughout the year. When we acknowledge the observances that are celebrated by our diverse workforce, we create an environment that demonstrates respect and inclusion, and that's very important as part of our program. So it is still early days for our D&I Council and ERG groups, but the strategy and work plan is really critical to our success. And right now we're at the final stages at this point in time, and we hope to roll out the strategy and plan in the next month or so. But I'll give you a flavor for what we've been working on and what we have in mind. So we're developing this plan from the ground up. We engaged the ERGs to do some brainstorming and bring opportunities forward for our plan. We focused them on 3 areas: on awareness and education, develop programs and engage employees, and recruitment and retention. And we also didn't want to lose sight about our obligations under the Leadership Accord, because we will be doing that rebaselining in the next 2 months. Really, our goal with the strategy and plan is to make sure that we align what we do with our corporate values. We want to create champions across the organization for diversity and inclusion. We want to create general awareness for sure. We want to set some very specific goals and measure our progress, and we want to communicate that to the organization so they know where we are. So some of the items in our plan, of course, we're going to have a training plan. Training is a big part of the education and awareness. We need a robust communication plan because we have a lot of things that we want to get done, and we want to make sure that the organization is aware of all the great things happening. We want to do formal and informal mentorship programs. We're going to hold some surveys, continue with our partnerships with external organizations, and we will do a number of HR or practice reviews. So there's a number of things on the HR front that we want to look at going forward as well. So we truly believe at Electra that diversity and inclusion is critical to our business success, and we're using many different mediums to communicate the D&I programs and initiatives at Electra. And I'm going to show you a second video because videos have been very great for us in getting the momentum going on this initiative. So I want you to take a look at this video of our employees who are giving their unsolicited views of what diversity and inclusion mean to them.
The company is open to bring anybody from any part of the world, and I think Electra is doing that.
When I moved over to the utility, again, I was maybe one of 5 people of color in the building. And now when I consider Electra and where we are on our journey in terms of diversity and inclusion, it's so welcoming, so heartwarming.
There's a real diverse community that's come into the workplace from all different forms of life, and where they've lived at, languages.
Girls can work just as hard as guys, and usually we have to work twice as hard to prove ourselves.
You and I may not see the same thing the same way, and I think as long as we both kind of understand that there's differences, maybe there's a way we can both kind of work together and leverage both our strengths to kind of attack the problem or, you know, the issue in the best way possible, right?
We've got so many different people from different backgrounds, different cultures, who are all infusing those ideas that they have and experiences that they've had into that project or that work that you're doing, and that to me brings perfection to work.
But when I look around an organization, especially at the office I'm located, it's vastly diverse. And when you bring that together, I think it makes you more effective as an organization. If you leverage that correctly, it makes you a better competitor against people that might not be as diverse.
You know, at Electra, I find it refreshing that there's a lot of programs, diversity being one of them. But even if I look at the leadership, there's a lot of focus on women in leadership, a big focus on people with different ethnicities in leadership. And I'm happy that, you know, things are going in the right direction.
I'm Nadine, and I'm from Jamaica, and I love you back. I genuinely believe that diverse groups can bring the organization towards a new way of thinking, a more out-of-the-box, more creative, more innovative thinking.
We want to engage everyone in the organization. We want this to be as inclusive as possible. We want this to be a grassroots movement that's going to take our company and build a strong team so that we understand each other, we celebrate our diversity, and we move forward together.
And the end goal is that we don't need a diversity and inclusion program because we're automatically there.
Well, we call that our Brady Bunch video. It's been very helpful to get employees across the organization engaged in what we're doing. So these videos have been very successful in the launch and to gain some momentum from these programs. So I think that's it for my presentation. If we want to open it up to questions.
Yes, absolutely. I do have a couple of questions. So thank you, Kathy, for sharing Electra's story. I agree. I think the videos are really wonderful. So we know that organizations are all at different stages in their approach to this topic and are eager to hear from those who are leading the way. Great segue into the questions. So I'll just start off with one that we got on the web. The first question here I have is, I wonder if tracking the data and using IT will help identify pain points and successes, perhaps across the sector as opposed to each utility. Perhaps that could even set the stage for a competitive mindset, as Kathy, you revealed and mentioned is a good fit for the culture.
I mean, I think it'd be great if we could track stats across the province and even across Canada. I think right now, I know that people who have signed the leadership accord, I don't think we're at the point where we're actually sharing specific data from companies. I mean, we may be able to share some consolidated data, but I think that is where we need to go for sure. And then if you can pinpoint people who are doing really great things and who have really good stats, they can start sharing, how they got there. But I think if you're going to start from a grassroots point, you want to compare, set some goals and compare what you're doing internally and get yourself moving in the right direction before we maybe bite off too much.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Is there another question out in the audience? I think somebody's going to be mentioning a question. No?
This is Margaret from the IES. Is it possible to get a copy of your presentation?
Yep. Well, we're going to make it available as well on the EHRC website.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Kathy, I have a question. Can you let us know what those organizations who are just starting on this journey do first? Is it getting executive buy-in, or should they be reviewing their current initiatives?
Well, I wouldn't be doing a very good job as the vice chair of EHRC if I didn't tell people to sign the leadership accord first. But I mean, that is actually very practical advice to give to somebody, because you do need something to get you started. So obviously you need the CEO's support, because these initiatives take resources, time, and money. And so you do need support from the top. And that's one thing the Accord really does. It provides the CEO making a public commitment on behalf of the organization. So I think that's a great step. But part of the tool too, and whether you do it through the Accord or through another way, is you really should understand where you're starting from. So unless you understand where you're starting from and where the big gaps are on gender diversity or diversity and inclusion, it's pretty difficult to start prioritizing what you do first. You obviously want to do the things that are going to give you biggest bang for the buck, but taking a little bit of time to baseline your organization and understand what you're doing well and what you're not doing well, I think is an important starting point.
Okay, great. I have another question from the audience. What was your biggest learning and surprise when going through this exercise in the assessment?
Biggest learning. I don't think I was actually surprised by anything, because we kind of had a good feel of where our organization was right now. I think the biggest learning was just, I think we probably didn't educate the organization broadly enough on the elements of the Accord and details of our action plan to move forward. We've kind of been doing it a little bit piecemeal and we will be doing it more formally through the D&I program. But yeah, so I wasn't surprised at what we found, but it does take a lot of effort to share details of that initiative with the organization. So you can never underestimate how much time it takes to communicate some of that stuff.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions through the audience?
I wonder if I can offer one, please. It's Kim again. Kathy, would you be able to speak to why there would be an advantage to being sort of a signatory to an international framework like Equal by 30, in addition to the domestic one?
Sure. So I think I briefly mentioned this in my presentation, but what we really liked about Equal by 30 is that it provided an international platform. So Electricity Human Resources Canada has a Canadian-wide view, but the international platform was very really interesting to us. And once we found out that there wasn't any additional burdens for reporting, because we were a signature of the accord, that was very, very good for us too. But it's really the international recognition. And we also know that the timing was great because Canada's hosting the role of the Clean Energy Ministerial, which happens next May. And Canadians want to be on the forefront of this stuff. So we want to showcase all the great things we're doing on gender equality.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. I have a few more questions from the audience as well. So the next question is, has Electra considered design tools such as role-playing or scenario building as a way to integrate diversity into specific departments or even across the company?
No, we haven't, but we haven't specifically looked at that, but that's a great idea that I can feed into our multi-year plan. Do you know anyone that has done that? Has anyone actually tackled that in their organizations?
It doesn't, I don't have a response to that question, but I do have another question for you if you'd like to continue on. Sure. How are you measuring the return on your investment in diversity and inclusion?
So right now we do measure very basic statistics on men versus women in the organization. So we do have some percentage, but the Diversity and Inclusion Council will be building a diversity and inclusion scorecard for the organization, which is not done yet, so I can't share what we're measuring, but we do want to measure things on many fronts for diversity and inclusion, and share that with the organization on our progress against those KPIs.
Okay, great. I have another question. Could you provide a bit more detail on how you establish the various ERGs? If it is voluntary, who initiates the purpose and reason?
Sure. So we went out to the organization. We actually provided a little bit of a short form application to the organization on how to apply for an ERG, and it asked them questions about, we gave them a baseline that for sure we want to do an ERG for women at Electra because that was our starting point, but we asked them for suggestions on what other areas of ERGs that they wanted and why, and we had a short questionnaire, and then we evaluated all of the questionnaires that came back in. And as I said, the majority of them were focused on women at Electra, but we did have a number that were for visible minorities that we call Mosaic. So those are the two that we really started from. But we just took feedback directly from the organization, from everybody who actually filled out an application.
Okay, great. Another question we have here from the audience, can you give us some more details on the Conestoga Pre-Tech program?
Well, I don't have a lot of details. So we had a partnership with Conestoga. We sit on their advisory committee. So we worked with them to create a pre-trades program. So we wanted the Aboriginal community to get a feel for what it's like working for a utility. So a pre-trades program would be introduction to, having laborers working on line crews and teaching them a little bit about electrical safety. It's really an introductory course to get them involved. But I mean, when they take a course like this, they could work as a groundman in a utility, and it just gives them a kind of an entry point into the program. So we provided some guidance. We provided trainers for the program. The only disappointing thing about it was that we didn't have any women in the group, and we were hoping for both men and women to be in that course.
Okay, great.
But I could always connect somebody with Conestoga if they wanted to find out a lot more details about that.
Okay, great. Thank you. The next question I have is, does Electra have targets?
Not yet, but when we complete our scorecard, we will be setting some targets.
Okay. I have another question here. How do you balance the increased promotions and onboarding of women while not minimizing their skills and qualification? We have heard from some women and other EE groups that sometimes these visible commitments minimize their success, i.e. creating backtalk that she only got the job because of this initiative. How do you minimize the feeling reverse discrimination? And in brackets, I hate saying that.
Oh. Well, I think, it'll be part of our people practices review on how we kind of counteract that. I understand where the question's coming from, and I think it's about transparency, and I think understanding what we expect up front through the whole job process, posting process, and evaluation process, so people think it's a transparent and fair process. And I think, as people get on board with the whole diversity and inclusion, I think some of this back talk is going to go away when they understand the process better.
Okay. Lots of questions here today, which is wonderful. The next question is there any great ways you have to engage unions?
I don't know, we got a lot of buy-in right across the organization. I mean, if we did not get any union participation, I would suggest that you go to the union leads and start with them with an introduction to our program. We did give them a heads up that we were launching this program. They were very positive about it, so we didn't see that we were going to get any negative backlash or lack of participation. But I think it's a good idea whenever you do anything across the organization is to give the union leadership a heads up.
Okay. The next one I have, I'm not sure if it's a question, it's part of a question, and it looks almost like a comment, but it could be a question. Suggested activities for setting underrepresented people in the energy sector on the path to careers in energy starting at a middle school level. Is there suggested activities, I guess?
So excuse me. So I did share one of my slides with the work that we're doing in communities. I think it's really important that we start engaging young women in grade school. So we're involved in a program, a STEM Girls Club through the YWCA that encourages girls in grade 5 and 6 to get kind of acclimatized to what STEM means. They introduce them to women leaders in STEM in all areas. So in Hamilton, for example, the girls came here for a day and we did some activities with them. They go to McMaster University and they meet doctors and scientists. So it just gets their headspace and their awareness of what's possible in the area of STEM. And as we move into the high school, we work on a number of things with both the private and Catholic school board about encouraging young women to go into the trades and through an apprenticeship program. So all these things that you do in the community, whether it's getting your your females in non-traditional jobs out there talking to them, or working with school boards, colleges and universities to promote the opportunities that we have in the electricity sector. Those are all really great things. But what we found through some of the work that I've done is that, yes, the numbers are still low for engineers, for example, in universities, but there is quite a leaky pipeline for when these women get into the workforce. So if you're involved in the development of culture or D&I programs at your organization, developing a culture that really welcomes women into non-traditional jobs is very critical for your organization if you want to attract and retain women in STEM or non-traditional jobs like the trades. So I've heard that pretty loud and clear, that through a lack of programs or just a negative culture in the organization, it really drives women out of the electricity sector. So that's maybe a takeaway if you're working on any HR programs or a D&I program, to keep that in the back of your mind. It really is about a positive culture and welcoming women into the workforce.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you, Kathy, so much. I have one more question here, and it's actually a great segue to continue on with the presentation. The question is, does the Equal by 30 campaign or leadership accord have any sites that have organizations who are progressing well and what they are doing? So I will continue on because we do have a brief answer in that regard. But before I get to that, we did questions. The slide you see in front of you now is logos from our Accord signatories and advocates. So for those of you who are perhaps on the call and not sure if your company is part of Equal by 30 or has signed the Accord, we've included this slide and the next slide for you to review. And if you're not there, you may want to speak to your CEO about joining the best club in town. So the next slide will represent the signatories of the Equal by 30. And Kim, maybe you'd like to speak a little bit about that.
Absolutely. First, to draw the obvious is that there is a lot of crossover between Leadership Accord and Equal by 30. Again, that's by design. We think it makes sense. What you're going to see in Equal by 30 is that we are international. So we have international signatories from around the world, really, and some of our partners are explicitly those international organizations that we work with. You'll see also that we recruit public sector, and this might be where we're a little bit unique in that we have the power to sort of compel federal and provincial and territorial governments to consider signing on as well. But to the earlier question, are there people knocking it out of the park? Oh, heck yeah. I mean, the talent is rich in that regard. There are a lot of organizations doing tremendous work, and often without the recognition of being attached to a campaign like this one. You know, that's principally why there's an opportunity here under Equal by 30, under the Leadership Accord. We're already doing the work. The truth is, my experience has been that a lot of the clean energy sector are already looking at diversity and inclusion. They see the connection between the bottom line. And more importantly, I think we have come to a time where this isn't just the smart thing to do, it's the right thing to do.
Great, thank you. So to answer another part of that question as well, is if you wanted to find out more information about both initiatives, you can visit our website at electricityhr.ca, and you can also visit the website equalby30.org. So Kim, I'm going to hand it over to you for some final remarks before I conclude the webinar today.
Yes, absolutely. Once again, thank you to everybody on the line who came to hear from Kathy. Kathy, that was tremendous. You are a textbook in terms of how to approach this. The advice that you've given, I think, will give a lot of organizations some really good starting points. But I would want to underscore something that you said, and that's, you know, all roads can lead to Rome. There is no right or wrong way to begin a discussion on increasing diversity in organizations. We are not looking for the Cadillac in all instances. That's not realistic. It's not what we want to do. We do want to move the needle incrementally and apace with what we know about our environments, about our organizations, and about our cultures. That's going to be different for everybody. But insofar as we can bring together people who are invested in the work, I think there's an opportunity to learn from each other and to grow. Marie, thank you so much. EHRC continues to be really just the standard in terms of organizing the sector to look at this issue and take it seriously. We're delighted to be partners with you. We are available to anybody who'd like to talk more about Equal by 30. First thing I'm going to tell you to do is sign the leadership accord, and then Equal by 30 by proxy. So thank you once again, everybody. I know that we've got 4 minutes to the hour, so an extremely well-run session and really phenomenal questions out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you, Kathy. It's been a real pleasure for you to both participate in this webinar today. And I hope that it was a valuable session today for everybody else that was listening in. So if you have questions after today, please do not hesitate to contact us directly. And we'll look forward to a second of this series that will be happening on Wednesday, February the 13th, where we will look at taking a new approach and providing you with tools to implement a strategic diversity and inclusion program. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.